They sat me next to the kitchen. From there, through a swinging door, I watched Lucas, my son, stand under the wedding arch, just behind a tray of cheesecake being wheeled by. I sat there beside the ticking clock on the wall, each beat counting down the last threads of my patience. Through the narrow opening, I could see Lucas beaming beneath the arch, while I sat trapped in the shadows of dirty serving trays. I had paid for it all. Every bottle of champagne. Every table draped in white. Every vase blooming in the hall. But when the music started, when glasses clinked and toasts were raised, I realized something. I didn't belong. Not even a little. I smiled, stayed silent. And after the last slice of cake was served with just one phone call, I shattered the celebration I had once held so close to my heart. If this story found its way to you, hit subscribe and tell me where in the world you're listening from. No name card, no welcome note, no friendly smiles, just a rickety folding chair with a crumpled napkin tossed carelessly on top. That was my place, squeezed between stacks of dirty dishes and a cart with wheels that screeched every time someone brushed past. I stood there for a moment, blinking hard, the smell of heavy tomato sauce mixed with steam from the kitchen filling the stale air. I could feel the heat from the industrial ovens pressing against my back, and somewhere deep in my chest, a string tightened. So thin, so fragile, I didn't even dare to touch it. I looked down at the gray suit I wore, smooth fabric, every crease ironed flat since early morning. I had woken up at 5 a.m., carefully pressing the jacket, polishing the worn-out shoes, tightening the tie in front of the mirror. All of it for a silent hope that today might be my day too, just like theirs. But no one said a word to me, not one. No heads up that the seating had changed, no welcoming glance. Not even Lucas, not even him. He was too busy beaming, fixing his cufflinks as Sophie's father stepped up, straightening Lucas's collar. Like he had been the one to cradle him through nightmares, like he had been the one to sit through the long, freezing nights by a hospital bed. And me? I had once chosen between paying rent and keeping that bright smile alive on his face. I tightened my grip on the old leather wallet, the one Lucas gave me on Father's Day when he was 10. Back then, he still called me Dad with a trust so pure, so unbroken. My hand trembled slightly, a faint vibration ran through my fingers. I couldn't tell if it was from emotion or from a hurt that was quietly growing. A young server hesitated, then walked over. They said you should wait here, sir. The bride wants everything to match the theme. I looked him straight in the eye. Theme? He avoided my gaze, glancing toward the swinging door where it banged every time someone pushed through. Outside, music and laughter rose in distant waves. For better wedding photos? That's all, he mumbled. I sat down. The folding chair creaked under my weight, tired and brittle. The floor beneath me was sticky with dark stains, leftovers maybe from yesterday's event. Every time I shifted, the shine on my polished shoes blurred into the grime. I looked down at my hands, calloused, sun-worn, still carrying faint scars from years of overtime shifts and accidents I never talked about. The same hands that tightened the tie this morning, as if convincing myself I still belonged somewhere in his world. Then I looked at the cold, wilted sandwich placed in front of me on a chipped porcelain plate. But the worst part was, I stayed silent. Not a word of protest, not a single look of reproach, because today was Lucas's day. And I told myself, don't ruin it for him. Don't be the shameful father. Because I had paid for everything, and somewhere deep down, still foolishly believed that meant I had a place. I pulled out the wedding program handed out at the church. Elegant handwriting curled across thick, cream-colored paper. I scanned the names. Mine wasn't there. Sophie's father walked her down the aisle. Her mother gave the first speech. And me? I was just the one who paid. The shadow behind the kitchen door. The man they made sure never crossed a camera lens. I kept telling myself, just sit through it. It would pass. But sometimes silence is the loudest scream. The kitchen door swung again. I caught a glimpse. The chandeliers ablaze outside, the band striking up, the first song filling the air. Lucas and Sophie spun under the soft golden light. Graceful, radiant. He didn't once look back for me. I lifted the crumpled napkin to my mouth, pretending to wipe away a non-existent stain. My eyes stung. I told myself it was just the fried onions from the kitchen. Steam, heat, not betrayal. But dear God, it was betrayal. As sharp as a hidden crack, so small you hardly notice, until the whole glass shatters under pressure. I stared at the wall in front of me. There was a patch of peeling paint just behind the fire extinguisher. I fixed my eyes on it, so hard it felt like I could burn a hole straight through the worn-out wall. That patch of wall became my only lifeline, the only thing keeping me from breaking down right there among the servers carrying trays of bagels. Because if I let go, if I let the tears fall, I knew I wouldn't be able to stop. I breathed in deep. Then again, the cold sandwich sat untouched in front of me. I didn't take a bite. And then someone brought out dessert, a towering cake frosted in white and pale gold. Bride colors, her perfect dream. I didn't taste it, just stared at it. And then I did the only thing I could. I picked up my phone, made 3 calls, quick, terse, cold. Cancel tomorrow's brunch, terminate the second half of the band's contract, shut down the bar before midnight. No explanations, no pleading, just one mechanical thank you before hanging up. When I put the phone down, I didn't feel guilty. I didn't feel regret. Only one thing, flickering beneath the thick skin of years of patience, strength. I looked down at my hands, no more trembling, no creases of fear, only a steady silence, like a truck engine rumbling back to life after a long frozen winter. The kitchen door slammed against the wall again, a flash of light, a burst of laughter, a world I no longer belonged to. Let them toast. Let them celebrate. I had my own plans. That night, I didn't sleep. Not a minute. I lay rigid on the stiff hotel bed, still in my old suit, staring at the ceiling fan spinning above me. At one point, I almost wished it would fall, straight onto my chest and end it all. The greasy smell from the kitchen still clung to my hair, mixed with the sharp scent of expensive wedding perfume and the salty tang of sweat, a layer of shame that stuck to my skin like a second, inescapable skin. At some point, I kicked off my shoes. My feet were swollen. They had been aching since the ceremony began, but I hadn't dared take the shoes off. Because even back there, in the kitchen, I still wanted to look presentable. Still wanted to belong. But the price of looking presentable turned out to be a humiliation I would never forget. Around 4 a.m., I jolted awake. The digital clock on the nightstand glowed a faint, angry red. My phone buzzed again on the table. I didn't rush to check it. I already knew. Missed calls from Lucas, from Sophie, a text from my niece. Uncle, what's happening? Everyone's freaking out. I reached for my tablet, opened the wedding expense spreadsheet I had carefully built, item by item, dollar by dollar, over more than a year. I knew every line by heart. Every last-minute tablecloth swap, every extra bouquet ordered with a tight, awkward smile, every upgrade request Sophie wrapped in velvet words. The first time she said it, it was like a knife hidden in silk. We just want everything to look a little more elevated, Uncle Thomas. So the simple church wedding became a renovated warehouse with crystal chandeliers and vintage whiskey barrels for decoration. So the modest drink reception turned into a custom cocktail bar. So the 2-tiered wedding cake became 5 tiers, gilded in gold. I paid for it all. No one offered to split the cost. Not Lucas, not Sophie's family, and me. I never asked. Because all I ever wanted was for Lucas to have the things I could never give him during all those years. I scrolled through the spreadsheet, each number slicing back through old memories. I once worked night shifts at the steel mill, standing in front of roaring furnaces until the skin on my hands blistered, just to buy Lucas a new bike for Christmas. There were months I had to choose, rent or new shoes for him. I always chose his smile. Every dollar I earned I poured into him, believing that one day he would look back and understand. Those years now felt like a distant dream, blurred by the glittering chandeliers of today. I scrolled through the transaction list, my fingertips brushing the screen, until my eyes caught 2 unusual charges, and my breath hitched. 2 expenses added just days before the wedding. A cocktail tasting at a high-end bar, an upgraded rehearsal dinner, both at the same restaurant. The same night they sat me by the kitchen door. I frowned, opened the itemized receipt. It was my card. The credit card I had given them, only for the venue deposit, now charged without permission. And then I saw the message. On Venmo. Sent to one of Sophie's bridesmaids. Father-in-law's got it covered. Go wild. Wedding vibes. I didn't cry. Not this time. What I felt wasn't pain anymore. It was a heavy emptiness pressed so deep that nothing was left. Like when a body hurts so much it goes numb. Like when a heart shatters so thoroughly it simply can't break again. And somewhere inside that emptiness, I found a truth colder than anything I had ever known. Inside me, everything went numb, as if every nerve ending had curled up, shrinking to protect itself. I reached for the bedside lamp, snapped it on. The harsh yellow light stabbed my eyes, making me squint. I stood up, walked to the mirror above the dressing table, and froze. A stranger stared back at me. The familiar soft lines of my face had hardened overnight into something weary, something brittle. My hair hung flat on one side, crushed from fitful sleep. I looked like I had aged 10 years in a single night. But then, something shifted inside me. Slow, deliberate. I smoothed my hair back, splashed cold water on my face, wiped it dry with a stiff, bleach-scented hotel towel. Then I sat down at the desk, opened my laptop, and began to write. One email to the florist. Please cancel Sunday's flower delivery. I will be withholding the remaining balance. Thank you. One email to the band. Due to a schedule change, we will no longer require the second performance. Please consider the contract concluded. One email to the bar service. We are downsizing the post-wedding event. Please cancel the overtime shifts. Do not process any remaining payments. 3 messages, short, polite, leaving no room for reversal. The sky began to lose its color, from thick, suffocating black to a bruised purple light like the slow bloom of a hidden wound. I closed the laptop, sat still on the bed, listening to the steady hum of the air conditioner, and for the first time in months I felt myself, coming back to myself. I wasn't angry, not exactly, but I was resolved. Resolved to step away from being the convenience. Resolved to stop being the walking bank. Resolved to leave behind the shadow of the forgotten man. Let them scramble, let them patch things up, let them squirm under questions that would have no easy answers. Let them remember, the moment when the music died, the bar closed, the flowers never came, and if they still had a shred of conscience left, maybe, just maybe, they would remember who made that day possible in the first place. The man sitting behind the kitchen door, the man they had deliberately erased from every photograph. The music still pulsed through the walls, like the faint heartbeat of a world that had already pushed me out. I sat there on the rickety folding chair, holding a cold appetizer plate and a can of Diet Coke pulled from the catering fridge. I tried not to listen, but you can't really block it out. The clink of glasses, the bursts of laughter, the cheers slipping through every swinging door. Each sound, a needle stabbing straight into a pride already worn thin. I sat there, listening to the music fade, and knew the real pain hadn't even started yet. The microphone screeched a little. Then a man's voice rang out, raising a toast. Maybe Sophie's father, maybe Lucas's best man. I leaned back just enough to catch a glimpse through the gap in the swinging door. They were lining up in front of the gaudy floral arch I had paid Dylon to set up. Gold-plated chairs, floating candles on the small pond, a neon sign in the middle of the courtyard. The future is forever, swirling saccharine letters. I didn't need to see their faces to recognize the voices. Sophie's mother, Lisa, piped up with syrupy sweetness. Oh, Lucas, you're the most wonderful man in the world. Sophie's so lucky. Laughter burst out. Glasses clinked. I froze. At the head table, Lisa sat in the center, draped in a navy chiffon gown, draped in pearls as if she had been born into privilege. In truth, she had only met me 3 times before the wedding. Never once asked about my life. Never once thanked me for quietly covering the bills. Not a single dollar contributed. Through the crack of the swinging door, I watched Lisa stand and lift her glass. Lucas, you're so lucky to have Sophie, she said, her voice dripping sugar. Then she glanced at me. Just a flicker, with a strained smile as if I were an uninvited guest. When I had met her at the rehearsal dinner, she patted my shoulder and said, "Thanks for helping, Thomas," but never once offered to split the costs. Sophie's father, Michael, was worse. Not everyone can do what you did. Raising a kid alone on a factory worker's wage, he said once, like my sacrifices were some kind of joke. Beside her, Michael, Sophie's father, leaned back, laughing loudly, like a suburban king holding court. The same man who had shaken my hand at the rehearsal dinner and said, "We really admire your perseverance. Raising Lucas alone must have been tough." Perseverance. As if I had climbed Everest, instead of grinding through years in work boots and greasy uniforms just to buy my son a new pair of shoes every school year. And there, Lucas, my son, sitting among them, laughing like he belonged there all along, like he had never been mine. I searched the crowd, desperate for a familiar face. There was my sister Susan sitting quietly 2 rows back, next to our cousin Carol. Both of them stared straight at the stage. Neither of them glanced toward the kitchen door. Not once. I pressed myself against the kitchen wall, feeling the chill of the plaster seep through my shirt. The polished leather shoes I had shined so carefully that morning were now dusted with kitchen grime, just like my pride, stained under the gaudy lights outside. I wasn't part of the celebration. I wasn't even a supporting character. I was the problem they had tidied away, with a folding chair shoved against the wall and a door quietly shut. Someone passed by, a young server, probably still in college. She glanced down at my cold, untouched plate, then offered a small, awkward smile, half embarrassment, half pity. I smiled back. Cold, brittle smile. The only thing left in the room. "Would you like some more water, sir?" The young server's voice trembled. I shook my head. "I'm fine." But dear God, I wasn't fine. Every joint in my legs, every vertebra in my spine, every clenched muscle in my jaw, throbbing, pulsing pain up to my temples. My heart sat heavy in my chest, a rotting stone I couldn't lift. I stared at the plate in front of me. 3 lonely olives, 1 paper-thin slice of brie, a shriveled piece of bread. I hadn't eaten all day, but my throat felt no wider than a straw. My stomach twisted into a fist. I thought about the seating chart. A few weeks before the wedding, I had asked Sophie gently, "Did you find a seat for me yet?" She smiled, a bright, brittle smile that almost hurt to look at. "Don't worry, Uncle Thomas, we're finalizing everything." I should have known. I did know. Deep down, I knew. I was being managed. Not invited, not included. Just a prop, a wallet, a shadow. Summoned for my name on the payment ledger, but never truly wanted at the table. The worst part? I agreed to it. I let them chip away at me, piece by piece. No speech at the ceremony, no father-son dance, no photos before the event, no mention in the program. All that was left was a folding chair by the kitchen. "Would you like some more water, sir?" the young server asked, her voice shaking. She glanced at the cold plate in front of me, then quickly toward the brightly lit hall. "I'm sorry," she whispered, as if she had been the one who shoved me back here. I shook my head, gave a faint smile. "I'm fine." But her eyes, full of guilt, were the only thing in that kitchen that reminded me I was still seen. Laughter burst again from the reception hall. Lucas's deep, familiar laugh. The same laugh he used to let loose when I chased him through the backyard sprinklers as a kid. The same laugh that, for years now, hadn't been meant for me. Something stirred inside my chest. Not sadness, not disappointment. Anger. Silent. Searing. Cold. I stood up, walked slowly toward the swinging door, placed my hand on the edge, pushed it open just a sliver, and there, my eyes locked onto Sophie's. She stared straight at me. No shame, no fear, no flinch, just a calm, steady look, as if I was exactly where I belonged. In the kitchen, out of sight, out of reach. Sophie turned away, throwing her head back in laughter with her bridesmaids. And in that moment, I understood. This wasn't a mistake. It wasn't forgetfulness. It was a choice, a decision. They wanted me hidden. And Lucas let it happen. They made it happen, together. And right then, something shifted inside me. Not shattered, not collapsed, shifted. My place in their lives had changed, and I was done pretending not to see it. Let them have the spotlight. Let them drink the champagne. Let them live in a world where I didn't exist. They had no idea what they had awakened in me. The lights in the hall dimmed. A toast was about to begin, a speech about to be made. I stood there, just beyond the door, ready for the last time I would ever let them decide my worth. The fairy lights twinkled overhead. Large gold-rimmed plates caught the dim glow of candles on every table. The microphone screeched slightly. Then Sophie's father's voice rang out across the hall, loud and overblown like a TV show host. "Let's raise a glass to our wonderful daughter Sophie. Perfect groom Lucas." The crowd erupted in cheers. I stepped back. Behind me, the kitchen was chaos. Metal trays crashing, a server yelling about the gluten-free meal at table 12. I pressed myself against the wall, feeling the cold plaster seep through my shirt. The smell of fried garlic and oil hung heavy in the air. From the ballroom, Sophie's father's voice rolled on, smooth and sparkling. When she was little, Sophie always dreamed of a fairy tale, a prince, a castle, and a happily ever after. And today, darling, you have it all. More applause. I swallowed hard. They were rewriting history, but I couldn't forget the nights I sat by Lucas's bed, listening to his steady breathing, thinking that if he was healthy, every ounce of my pain was worth it. I remembered sewing the buttons on his school uniforms, my fingers bleeding, just to make sure he never felt less than anyone else. They called today a fairy tale. But in the story they were telling, there was no place for me. I thought of the day Lucas turned 15, when I taught him to drive on the dirt road behind our house. How he panicked and slammed the gas instead of the brake, and we laughed until our sides ached as the car veered into the ditch. I had spent that entire Sunday fixing up his old bike, each scratch on my hands a quiet promise that I would always be there. But today, he didn't look back once. Those moments, those years I gave him, had been wiped clean from the story they were telling now. He wasn't there on the nights Lucas burned with fever, when I scrubbed vomit off the bathroom floor at 3 a.m. He didn't know what it meant to sew every school button by hand, because there was no money for a new set. He didn't drive through black ice to get Lucas to the elementary school chess tournament. They were rewriting history, a fairy tale, with me cut out of the pages. I looked down at my hands, fingers bruised and raw, skin coarse from years of labor. My body shivered slightly under the cold draft from the ceiling vent. Then it was Sophie's mother's turn. Her voice flowed, sticky sweet, smooth as if she had rehearsed it 100 times. We are so grateful that so many people who love Sophie and Lucas could join us today. And to welcome Lucas as a second son into our family. The applause thundered. A second son. Not a single thank you for the man who raised him. Not a single word about sacrifice. Not even a simple, thank you, Thomas. Thank you for giving us this man. Nothing. Bit down hard on the inside of my cheek until the metallic taste of blood seeped into my mouth. My legs ached, numb, but I refused to sit. Then the moment I dreaded arrived. Lucas stepped onto the stage. He took the microphone. The suit I had helped pay for hugged his confident, youthful frame. Bright white teeth, steady stance. A stranger so far from the boy I once cradled in the NICU. A man now, standing tall under the spotlight, about to give a speech, as if I had never existed. And with every word Lucas spoke after that, he erased what was left of the old father in his story. I just want to thank everyone for being here to celebrate with us today. Lucas's voice echoed through the hall, deeper than I remembered, smooth, as if rehearsed in front of a mirror a dozen times. Sophie, you've made me the happiest man. And thank you to your family for welcoming me as one of their own. I felt my throat tighten. Thank you to everyone who helped make this the best day of our lives, he said. Not once did he say my name. I was the one who paid for the venue. I was the one who covered the catering. I arranged the photographer, the band, the table linens, even the custom neon sign hanging in the middle of the hall. Even the pristine white dress Sophie was wearing was paid for out of my account. But under those stage lights, I didn't exist. I stood there, listening to Lucas's speech, each word quietly erasing me from his life. When he stepped off the stage, I turned and walked toward the restroom, faced the mirror. My face looked exhausted. But my eyes were still sharp. You don't deserve this, I whispered to my reflection, and for the first time I felt a flicker inside me, not anger, but resolve. I would no longer let them define me. Applause roared in the background. As Lucas finished his speech, I didn't wait. I stood, walked through the swinging door into the hall, every eye turned toward me. I took the microphone from the band, my voice steady, sharp. I paid for today, I said, from the flowers to the champagne, but from now on, I'll only be paying for my own life. I placed the microphone down, turned, walked out the side door, left a stunned silence behind me. The band struck up again. The dance floor began to fill. Someone brought me a piece of wedding cake, set it down on a thin plastic plate. I stared at it. Vanilla cake with raspberry filling, the bride's favorite. I had never liked raspberries. Not once. I picked up the tiny gold fork they handed out with the cake. My hand no longer shook. A memory flashed across my mind. Lucas's 10th birthday. A skinny boy standing outside a bakery, pointing at a chocolate cake covered in rainbow sprinkles. I had pulled 2 extra shifts just to buy him that cake. That night, Lucas hugged me so tight I thought he would never let go. That boy was gone. Now, standing before me was a man who had forgotten to save me a seat at his own wedding. I set the slice of cake aside and waited. I waited until dessert was over, until the guests began to rise, loosening ties, dabbing their mouths as the background music swelled to its peak. I left the kitchen, walked straight past the serving line, past the bar, out through the side door. Outside, the air was cool, so still I could hear the ringing in my own ears. I pulled out my phone. 3 calls, quick, no explanations. 1 to the florist, cancel the brunch flowers. 1 to the band, cancel the late-night set. 1 to the bar manager, cancel the cocktail menu and second bartender. By the time I got back to the hotel, the wheels were already in motion. Brunch? Canceled. Live music? Gone. Open bar? Closed. I had stayed silent long enough. Let's see what they made of what was left. Let's see if they noticed the emptiness. Let them wonder what happened. I didn't care if they called me petty or pathetic or ungrateful, because the truth was they had erased me from this story long ago. I was simply turning the page. The hotel room smelled faintly of rose lotion, mixed with a sharp metallic edge. Maybe it was stress. Maybe it was just the scent of my own skin. I sat cross-legged on the bed, no blanket, no pillow, just myself. And the silence, a strange, comforting silence. And for the first time in years, I realized this silence was mine to choose. I was still sitting there on the hotel bed. The blanket was still neatly spread, not a single crease since I had checked in 2 days ago. I hadn't cried, not a single tear. But somewhere inside me, something had hardened. Not the kind of brittle freeze that shatters easily, but something forged in fire, solid, deep, unbreakable. The sun hadn't risen yet. I reached for my wallet, pulled out my phone. 6 missed calls, 2 voicemails, over a dozen text messages. Lucas, Dad, where are you? Why was the brunch canceled? Dad, this isn't funny. Sophie, Dad, what's going on? Are you okay? Please answer. So childish. I let out a short breath, almost a laugh through my nose. Childish? I opened my banking app. My finger moved over the screen like it had 1,000 times before. Every Sunday night, every payday, every utility bill. The unauthorized charges were still there. Blatant, bold, undeniable. Sophie, the new daughter-in-law, had used my credit card for a pre-wedding bar crawl and a private spa day for her bridesmaids. The itemized bill: premium champagne, coordinated manicures, luxury facials, brunch for 8. No one asked me. No one asked for permission. The trust I had wrapped around myself like an old quilt through endless winters was now torn into scraps. I switched over to my email. 2 new messages. 1 from the florist. We regret the last-minute cancellation. As per the agreement, there will be no refunds. Fine. 1 from the band manager. We had already begun setup when we received your cancellation request. Your message was clear. We will retain the deposit. Also fine. When I hung up the phone, there was no guilt. Only a fire rising in my chest, like an old truck engine roaring back to life after a long winter. I was no longer the shadow behind the kitchen door. I was Thomas, and I was taking back what was mine. The next morning, I opened my banking app and looked at the balance left over from the canceled brunch. Instead of keeping it, I transferred the entire amount to a nonprofit that supports single parents. I didn't need the money. I needed them to know my worth wasn't measured by the bills I paid, but by what I chose to do with my heart. I wasn't doing this for revenge. I was doing it for me. For the man who once sat quietly in the kitchen. For the father who had been pushed out of the day that should have been his too. And in that moment, I knew this silence would be mine to choose. My stomach twisted. I hadn't eaten since yesterday, but the gnawing hunger never stood a chance against the low, persistent nausea. I stood up, yanked the stiff curtain aside. The sky outside was bleeding, a deep, burning orange fading into pink, then into a sickly, pale yellow, as if the world itself was rotting in its own way. And then I remembered. A red folder stuffed deep in the bottom drawer at home. Old papers, letters, things I had never dared to touch. I packed slowly, took a hot shower, scrubbing away the cloying perfume and the shame that had clung to my skin. Pulled on old jeans and a faded shirt, still carrying a faint lavender scent from the last wash. I left the hotel without a word. The ride home was silent. Just the whisper of tires on pavement and the low hum of unfamiliar songs on the radio. Questions needled at me like tiny pins. He didn't mention me. Everyone saw me pushed into the kitchen. No one did anything. When I turned onto the driveway, the rose bushes I had planted 2 summers ago were blooming. I didn't stop. I walked straight into the bedroom, dug under the old drawer. The red folder. I turned page after page until I found it. An old envelope, its edges yellowed, its ink slightly blurred. Evelyn's handwriting, dated just after her death. I remembered finding it weeks after the funeral, but back then I hadn't had the strength. Now it was different. I carefully tore open the edge of the envelope. The paper inside was so thin it felt like a breath could tear it apart. Slanted, trembling handwriting stared back at me. Thomas, if you're reading this, it means I never had the chance to tell you the truth. Before I met you, I made a mistake. I was already pregnant with Lucas. But his biological father, the man who should have stayed, abandoned us before I could even buy a crib. Then you came along. Kind, steady, true. And I was so afraid that if you knew the truth, you would leave us too. So I chose silence. I let you believe Lucas was your own. Thomas, you loved him with every fiber of your being. You never questioned. You never treated him differently. You were the only father Lucas ever truly had. I don't know if I even deserve to apologize, but please believe me. No one else could ever be his real father. Only you. I love you for that. For how you loved a child as if he were your own flesh and blood. The paper wilted in my trembling hands. Lucas wasn't mine by blood. A boy I had stayed up all night nursing through fevers, driven through snowstorms to chess tournaments, gone into debt just to buy his first suit. A boy who, just yesterday, let me sit shivering by the kitchen door, as if I were nothing more than a hired hand. A boy I had loved with everything I had. But that wasn't the only thing that tightened my chest. I thought of those years after Evelyn's death, when the house was so silent even the ticking of the clock made me flinch. Mrs. Henderson, the neighbor, once introduced me to a kind widow who baked cookies. She visited a few times, bringing the scent of vanilla and a soft smile. There were others, not many, but enough to remind me I could still be seen, still be loved. A piano teacher, a co-worker at the steel mill, a woman from the repair club. They saw me, not just a single father with rough hands, but a man worthy of happiness. But every time I thought of moving on, I would see Lucas, 10 years old, clutching his pillow in the corner, asking if his mother was coming back. And I was afraid. Afraid that loving someone else would make him feel replaced. Afraid that my happiness would cost him his sense of safety. So I locked my heart away, chose to stay alone, made him the center of my entire world. And now, knowing he wasn't even my blood, I wasn't angry at Evelyn. I was angry at Lucas for letting me sit there in that kitchen, as if all my sacrifices, my money, my heart, weren't even worth a glance. I was angry at myself for giving everything, only to be left with a folding chair and a plate of cold bread. Morning light danced across the worn carpet. I clenched the letter in my hand, no tears, no screaming, only a cold, cutting clarity sinking deep into my bones. It was time to choose myself. I had run out of tears years ago. What remained inside me now was not grief, not despair, but clarity. I stood up, quietly walked into the kitchen, poured myself a cup of black coffee, no sugar, sat by the window, watched the neighbor's sprinkler ticking rhythmically like a clock marking the start of a new life. Just another Sunday morning. But I was no longer the man who paid for someone else's dream, only to be shut behind a kitchen door. I opened my phone, started with the florist. Please confirm the morning delivery is no longer needed. My voice was calm, clear. No explanations, none needed. Next the band, same tone, same clarity. Finally the bar service. A small change of plans, no late night shift, thank you. 3 calls, 3 clean breaks. I could have stopped there. But I knew the storm had only just begun. I turned off my phone. Waited 5 minutes, turned it back on. 38 unread messages, 3 voicemails. Lucas, Dad, where are you? The band's not here, the bar's closed. What the hell's going on? Dad, everyone's freaking out. This is extremely unprofessional. I exhaled slowly and kept reading. The last message from Sophie, are you mad about the seating? Seriously? So childish. Childish. The word echoed in my mind, pressing into an old scar as if someone had found it and pushed. I closed my eyes, and in that darkness, I saw her smile, Sophie, across the glittering reception hall, a triumphant smile. She knew exactly where they had put me, knew exactly that I wouldn't fight back. Only this time, they were wrong. Because this morning, for the first time in years, I had chosen to stand. I set the phone down, powered it off, left them alone with the questions they didn't dare ask aloud. Let them wonder why the bar ran dry, why the band vanished, why the Sunday brunch became nothing more than a figment of their imagination. I cleaned the kitchen, wiped down the counters, fed the cat, each small task a breath of peace I hadn't known for months. Around noon the doorbell rang. I didn't answer. Let them stand there, bathing in the heavy heat and the awkward silence they had created for themselves. That night, I posted a single photo on Facebook. Not a wedding picture, not a picture of me, just a photo of a check I had written. Payee, wedding event coordinator. Amount, enough to buy someone else's dream. Account number blurred out. But my signature, bold and clear. No caption, no explanation, just a truth they couldn't deny. After that, I logged out. Not just from social media, but from guilt, from excuses, from pretending I hadn't been betrayed. Let them sit in the ruins. I wasn't going to pull them out anymore. Silence spread. No more messages, no more calls, just a heavy, unnatural stillness, like the eye of a storm drifting right over my little house. I could feel the chaos stirring beyond, their panic, their whispering, but I just sat there, sipping morning coffee, watching sunlight spill across the kitchen window. No makeup, no earrings, just me and a new day and the soft hum of the old refrigerator. Daniel hadn't called since yesterday. Only one voicemail, short and clipped, stiff and defensive. Dad, you blew it. Everyone's talking. I don't know what you're trying to prove, but you crossed a line. I didn't flinch, not a ripple of emotion. Because the truth is, you can give someone everything. Your time, your money, your love, and still be discarded like an unwanted thing. You can build an entire world for someone and still be erased from the picture because you didn't fit the aesthetic. Betrayal didn't surprise me anymore. What surprised me was that I no longer cared. That morning, I deleted Daniel's name from my contacts. Not to forget him, but to stop seeing his name light up on my screen, as if he still deserved to be there. By noon, I went out, picked up groceries, dropped by the post office, did the small, ordinary things of an ordinary day. And right there in the bakery aisle where fresh baguettes lined the shelves with the scent of butter, I ran into Diane, my cousin, who had flown in from Colorado for the wedding. Diane spotted me, offered a tight, hesitant smile. "Thomas," she said softly. I nodded. She stepped closer, lowering her voice. "Are you okay?" I looked straight into her eyes. "Are you okay?" I asked back, gentle but sharp. "Are you okay with seeing me shoved out of my own day?" Diane's cheeks flushed. She dropped her gaze. I didn't realize. I thought." "You didn't think." Diane bit her lip, let out a shaky breath. "I'm sorry, Thomas. I didn't realize. I thought Lucas was just busy with the wedding." I cut in, my voice cool but steady. "You didn't think, Diane?" No one did. They saw me in the kitchen, and no one did a thing, not even Lucas. Diane bowed her head, silent. For the first time, her silence said everything. She bit her lip again, then whispered, "I'm sorry. It was wrong." I gave a small nod, nothing more. Not every apology can stitch the truth back together. But still, I had started stepping out of the old shadows. I should have spoken up long ago, but all I did was nod once. "Thank you." Diane exhaled, relieved, as if that small acknowledgement had somehow absolved her, freed her. But not me. When I got home, there was a bouquet of carnations left on the porch. Cheap, already wilting. No card, no note. I didn't bring them inside. I carried them straight to the trash. The night before Lucas was hospitalized, I had placed a bouquet of bright sunflowers by his bed, his favorite. And now, only wilted carnations, left out of obligation. That evening I opened Facebook. The photo of the check I had posted had drawn nearly 100 comments. Old friends, former coworkers, neighbors, people I hadn't heard from in years. Some were stunned, some were angry, but most understood. One comment made me stop. "This broke my heart, Thomas. I've never felt so seen by someone else's story. Thank you for showing us that silence doesn't have to last forever." And just like that, a new beginning started to take shape. Not revenge, not hatred, but taking my power back. Let them rage in their group chats, let them spin their little stories, I wouldn't respond, I wouldn't explain, I wouldn't apologize. I chose silence. But this time, it was my silence. It all began with a stuck drawer in the guest bedroom. An old drawer, so jammed I had to shove it open with my hip. I wasn't looking for anything. Just clearing out the remnants of a life I was too tired to keep carrying. But then, buried among yellowed tax forms and expired coupons, I found it. The red folder. I thought I had emptied it before, but tucked inside the thin lining was a folded sheet of paper. No envelope. Just a letter, the handwriting crooked but unmistakable. Evelyn's signature at the bottom. Dated 3 days before she died. Thomas, if you're reading this, you've probably already found the first letter. I don't want to apologize anymore. I need to tell you another truth. Something I couldn't take with me to the grave. Something I should have told you long ago. I swallowed hard. The light blurred at the edges of my vision. Lucas was never truly yours. From the very beginning, he didn't belong to you. When I was young, I loved another man. I was already pregnant with Lucas before I ever met you. He left me. I was desperate, terrified. When we married, I didn't have the courage to confess. I remember the day Lucas was born. Your mother looked at him, really looked, and quietly asked me if there was anything I needed to tell. I bowed my head and said nothing. You just smiled, pulled her aside, and said, "He just looks like his mom." I knew you saw it. I knew there were moments when you doubted. But you chose to believe me. You chose to believe the things I couldn't say aloud. You believed in a truth I couldn't even face myself. I felt my chest tighten. You raised him with everything you had. You loved him more fiercely than anyone else ever could. But Lucas never carried your blood. And still, you were the father he never truly deserved. Thomas, I know I betrayed you in so many ways. But if there is one decision I never regretted, it was choosing you. You were the only man strong enough to be his father. Not because of blood, but because you were you. I didn't move. The weight of her words pressed down on me like a mountain. Not my biological son, not a misunderstanding, but a deception from the very start, a stranger's child. And I had loved him with everything I had. Wedged in the lining of the drawer, I found one more thing. Lucas's old phone, its case cracked, the screen fractured at the corner. I turned it on, just a sliver of battery left. In the archive of old messages I found it, a scar that had never fully healed. Mom says I'm not really his son, but I'll stay quiet. He'll still pay for college. I froze. It wasn't just betrayal, it was exploitation. And the most painful part, I had loved him. In a way I had never loved anyone before. I collapsed onto the edge of the bed, the letter trembling in my hand. 1,000 memories surged back. The first time I held Lucas, so small, so fragile. The night I rushed him to the ER with a raging fever. The nights I stayed up fixing his old bike so he'd have a Christmas gift. The day he got his college acceptance letter and broke down sobbing in my arms. I had lived for him. I had become the best father I knew how to be. I had laid my entire life across his tiny shoulders. And now, he had never truly seen me as a father. But there was one thing I knew for certain. Real love doesn't need shared blood to grow. I stared at the letter on the table. The ink faded by the weight of the years. It wasn't betrayal anymore. It was freedom. For 62 years, I had lived a version of myself, a version meant to serve others. A husband, a father, a protector. A ghost in the moments when they pretended I wasn't there. But now, with the truth laid bare in front of me, I saw something else. I had always had the power. I just hadn't known it. I had loved a child who didn't carry my blood. I had stayed when others had walked away. I had built a family without the ties of DNA. And now, I could choose again. I left the letter open on the kitchen table. No hiding it, no locking it away. That truth, I no longer needed to bury it. I moved through each room as if seeing everything for the first time. The beige walls, the photo of Lucas at his high school graduation, the dent in the doorframe, the one from when he crashed his bike into the house. I used to smile every time I saw that dent. Now I just stood there. This house was a museum of sacrifices. The worn recliner where I once rocked him to sleep, the sewing kit I used to patch up every torn pant leg, the kitchen shelf still stocked with honey bunches of oats, his favorite cereal, even though I had grown sick of it years ago. Suddenly, a question echoed in my mind. What cereal do I actually like? What was the last book I read? Not a parenting manual, not a hospital brochure, but something just for me. When was the last time I bought something simply because I wanted it? I had lived so long in the role of father that I had forgotten I was once a person too. I poured myself a glass of water, sat down on the sofa. The silence in the house felt different now. I poured myself a glass of water, sat down, and thought of Mr. Henderson, the old neighbor. Once, when I was working extra night shifts to cover Lucas's tuition, he patted my shoulder and said, "Thomas, you're a good father, but don't forget, you're a person too." Back then, I just laughed it off. But now, those words spark something small but fierce inside me. A reminder that I deserve to live for myself too. The phone buzzed gently on the table. Lucas. A long message this time, different from the others. I don't know what happened. I've been thinking a lot. Sophie says she didn't mean to make you feel hurt. I'm sorry if you felt abandoned. If I felt, not because they had abandoned me, not because they had erased me from their lives, just if I felt. I stared at the message, didn't reply. Not anymore. Because this time I chose silence for myself. I picked up the remote, turned on the TV. The soft murmur of a cooking show drifted through the room, steady and calm. My eyes fell back to the letter on the table. Lucas, not my blood, not my lineage, not even a twist of fate, just a child I had chosen to love, until he built a new family and pushed me aside like a stranger. But the pain I felt now was no longer for him. It was for the version of myself, the man who spent a lifetime giving, waiting for someone to turn back and ask, "Dad, are you okay?" Every birthday party I planned myself, every Christmas Eve spent wrapping dollar store gifts, every dinner dish I scrubbed clean when no one thought to lift a finger. I had been the background music of his life, the safety net, silently catching him every time he fell, the convenient silence, all the way up to today. That night, I took down the family photos from the walls, not out of anger, not out of hate, but because it was time to stop turning my life into a shrine for my own disappearance. I wrapped each frame in old towels, labeled the box, memories, not obligations. I cooked dinner just for myself, something I had seen once on TV, lemon butter pasta, roasted cherry tomatoes, garlic slow-baked to sweetness, no chicken nuggets, no boxed mac and cheese, no catering to anyone else's tastes but my own. I lit a candle, put on soft jazz, set a table for one, for me. It was quiet, but it wasn't lonely. After dinner, I pulled out pen and paper. No glitter, no fancy gold ink, just a sheet of yellow-lined paper and the soft scratch of a pen. I started a list of the people I truly wanted to invite, not out of obligation, not for appearances, but because they had seen me. Claire, a former colleague from the maintenance team who used to sneak coffee packets into my tool bag whenever I worked night shifts fixing the HVAC. Mr. Henderson, the kind neighbor, who woke up at dawn every winter to shovel my driveway without being asked. Dina, the barista at the little cafe on the avenue, who always remembered my black coffee, no sugar, every single morning. Janet, a friend from the OI Repair Club who stayed late after workshops to help me finish the old bike I gave Lucas for his 10th birthday. None of them shared my blood, but each one of them had done something Lucas never did. They had seen me. I wasn't planning a wedding, not a Thanksgiving dinner, just a small gathering at my house with food I would cook, a table I would set, and the real me at the center of it. No folding chairs, no kitchen doors. I spent the next few days preparing, not to impress anyone, but because for the first time, it was all for me. A party with no wedding dress, no fireworks, just a heart finally seen and accepted. For the first time in years, I wasn't preparing anything for someone else's story. Not for Lucas, not to atone for something, not to prove my worth, simply to create a small space for my own joy. I went to the neighborhood market, handpicked each item myself, a bundle of fresh parsley, a small bag of red onions, a bunch of crisp sweet carrots, no pre-made platters, no frozen meals. I even bought a new tablecloth, cream-colored, striped with soft blue lines. Simple, uncomplicated, like the young man I used to be before duty weighed down my life. The morning of the gathering, I woke early, turned on the radio. Old songs filled the house. Johnny Cash, Willie Nelson, Norah Jones. The air was thick with the scent of sautéed onions, roasting meat, and cornbread baking in the oven. It smelled like home. The first guest arrived just before 6 p.m. Claire, the old maintenance buddy from the supermarket days, walked in carrying a bottle of red wine and a wide, easy smile. "You look good, Thomas." And it was true. My hair had gone gray, but my eyes were bright, my posture straight, an old cotton shirt, no tie, no polished shoes. Just me, and I was proud of that. Then they all trickled in, 4 friends. Laughter spilled from the yard into the kitchen. Strong hugs. Easy claps on the back. Wine glasses refilling themselves without needing a toast. We had dinner around my old kitchen table, the same table that once held Bill's toolboxes and Lucas's math homework from years ago. Now it overflowed with steaming plates of food and the sharp, joyful clink of glasses meeting midair. I laughed too. For the first time, a laugh that came from deep inside. Not forced, not polite. Someone told a story about an AC unit breaking down in midsummer. Someone else confessed to sneaking off a night shift to eat a burrito. Amid the laughter, amid the small, easy stories, I realized this was real family. Not tied by blood, tied by heart. I didn't feel like an afterthought anymore. I wasn't being avoided. I wasn't small. I was present, clear, steady, free. By the end of the night, as we sat under the string lights glowing softly on the porch, Claire raised her glass. "To Thomas," she said, "who showed us that it's never too late to sit at the table you deserve." Everyone raised their glasses. The laughter lifted into the night, warm, true, as free as the open sky above us. That night, I didn't just host a party. I rebuilt my life. I smiled gently, and as I raised my glass, I meant it when I said, "Here's to each of us, finally being seen." The knock came just after noon, not frantic, not urgent, just patient, steady, as if the person outside knew I was home and wasn't planning to leave until I opened the door. I stood barefoot in the hallway, watching the blurred silhouette through the frosted glass. Lucas. A week had passed since the wedding. 7 days of absolute silence from me. 7 days for everything inside him to start crumbling. I opened the door slowly. He stood there. Still Lucas, but not quite the same. The sleek suit was gone. The gleaming, self-satisfied shine from that day, gone. All that remained was a young man in a wrinkled t-shirt, dark circles etched under his eyes, lips pressed tight as if he had rehearsed a dozen ways to start this conversation, and forgotten every one the moment he saw me. "Hi, Dad," Lucas stumbled. I didn't answer, just quietly stepped aside, leaving space. He hesitated a moment, then stepped in. The house was spotless, still. Midday sunlight spilled across the polished wood floor. Lucas glanced around. Only one thing had changed. On the mantel, every framed photo of him was gone. He froze. His eyes darted to the empty spaces. "Where are the photos?" I didn't answer. I simply said, calm and cold, "Sit." Lucas sat across from me. We faced each other. The silence filled the room, thick and unmoving. Lucas stood at the threshold, eyes pleading. "Dad, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to hurt you. Can we talk?" I looked at him, my voice steady but unshakable. "Lucas, I gave you everything I had. Now I need to keep something for myself." I closed the door without looking back. Lucas exhaled heavily, running a hand through his messy hair. I didn't come here to fight." I nodded once. "Good. He shook his head. "Lost." "I don't understand what happened. One minute everything seemed fine, and the next, you canceled everything. Then you posted that photo of the check on Facebook." Every word he said felt like a dull knife. Still not once asking if I was okay, still no apology, just a demand for explanation. I stood, walked to the closet, pulled out a small box, set it on the table between us. "What's this?" Lucas asked. "Receipts," I said. "Every line item, every payment, every bill from the last 12 months. Deposit on the venue, fittings for tuxedos and wedding dresses, catering advances, even the cost of expanding the dance floor, his special request." Lucas glanced at the stack, but didn't reach for it. I placed one more item on the table. A letter, handwritten, in his mother's unmistakable script. I said nothing, just sat there watching him read. At first, confusion. Then slowly, his eyes shifted. Confusion, shock, and finally, a pain he couldn't hide. But that pain, compared to the years I had lived through, was only just beginning. Lucas looked up, his voice cracked. "Dad, you knew all along?" I met his eyes. "I just found out," I said calmly. Lucas swallowed hard. "So, you're angry because I'm not your real son?" I shook my head, each word landing heavy as a hammer. "No, I found out after your wedding. I'm angry because I raised you with everything I had, And when you had a chance to stand up, to look out at everyone and say, "This man made me who I am today," you chose to sit down. Lucas dropped his gaze, silent. I went on, my voice steady. "You let them shove me into a cold kitchen. You let them treat me like a burden. You watched them humiliate me. And you chose silence. That was what broke me, not your blood, not the money." The air between us thickened. Finally, Lucas whispered, "I didn't think it mattered. Sophie said it would look better in the pictures if I wasn't out there with them, if I was tucked away. I didn't think it would hurt you." I laughed. Cold, sharp. "You thought wrong." I walked over to the mantel, picked up a frame, an empty one. The frame that once held a picture of Lucas at his kindergarten graduation. A missing front tooth, blue marker smeared across his white shirt. That day, he had run straight into my arms. I flipped the frame face down onto the table, a single final move. That version of me no longer exists. Lucas blinked as if taking a punch straight to the chest. "Dad?" he choked out. I just shook my head. "Not anymore, Lucas. I'm not the backdrop for your life anymore. I'm not an ATM. I'm not a shadow in the wings." Lucas clenched his fists, his jaw tightened, as if he was swallowing all the words he wanted to say. Then slowly he nodded. "I'm sorry." The words barely above a whisper. Too little, too late. I pulled out a cardboard box, placed it in front of him. "This is yours," I said. "Every receipt, every invoice, every contract, every penny I paid for that wedding." Lucas hesitated, then took it. I walked to the door, opened it wide. He lingered at the threshold, looked at me, searching for something, some crack, some sliver of hope. There was none. "You used to say," Lucas mumbled, "you used to say I was your whole world." I met his gaze. "I did. But starting today, I'm going to be my own world." I gave a small nod and closed the door. A few days later, Diane called. "Thomas," she said, "Lucas is really sorry. He just got caught up in everything. Can't you give him another chance?" I sighed. "Diane, I gave him a whole lifetime. Now it's time I lived mine." She fell silent, then hung up. And I knew it would be the last time we spoke about it. Inside, the laughter still filled the house. The laughter of old friends, the ones who truly saw me, the ones who understood me. The scent of sautéed garlic and rosemary wove through the small kitchen. On the table, the green tablecloth printed with sunflowers glowed under soft candlelight. Mismatched plates, glasses catching the light, stories bouncing back and forth like a summer song. And for the first time in a very long time, I realized I was truly living exactly where I belonged. Mr. Henderson sat in the corner, telling the story of the time he locked himself out of the house wearing nothing but a pair of shorts. The room erupted in laughter. Claire laughed so hard she clutched her stomach, tears streaming down her face from pure joy. And me? I stood barefoot in the kitchen, a glass of red wine in one hand, a smile I didn't need to hide on my face, no longer waiting for an invitation to join, no longer hiding behind a swinging kitchen door, no longer forgotten. I was the host. I was here. I was seen. I plated the last tray of roasted vegetables, zucchini, carrots, potatoes, all fragrant with thyme and sea salt. As I set it down, applause broke out. "Chef Thomas does it again." Claire beamed. We sat around the old table, passing bowls, refilling glasses, sharing small stories packed with life. Between another helping of side dishes and the last piece of cornbread, Claire lifted her glass again. "I think we should toast one more time," she said. Everyone nodded. "To what?" Dina asked. Claire turned to me, smiling. "To choosing yourself, and to stopping the giving to those who only know how to take." I raised my glass too. No shaking hands, no shaky voice. I stood up, looking around at each face at the table. People not bound to me by blood, but by choice, by kindness, by respect. And I said, "To those who became the backbone for others, quietly and without applause. To the hands that built dreams for others, even when no one remembered to say thank you. To the ones pushed into the shadows, even as they built the very house everyone else called home." I raised my glass, taking in the room. Faces not here out of obligation. Faces here because of love. Because of choice. And I said, "This toast is for everyone who was ever pushed into the dark and still chose to step into the light. From now on, we only sit at the tables we choose." The clink of glasses echoed around the room. Someone whooped. I sat down. Not in a corner, not in the back, not in exile. Right where I belonged. Lucas never called again, and I didn't need him to. the ones who mattered, were already here. The next morning, I woke to birdsong and sunlight flooding the room. No more regret, no more tightness in my chest. Just one thing left: peace. I brewed coffee, slipped on my robe, and sat on the front porch, the breeze brushing the soft fabric against my arms. I looked out over the garden, the roses I had planted long ago, now bursting open under the morning sun. No longer the forgotten backdrop for someone else's story. I was the main character of my own life. And finally, that was enough. Thank you for staying until the end of Thomas's story. Have you ever given everything to someone, only to be forgotten? Where in the world are you watching from? Did you see a part of yourself in Thomas's journey? If you were Thomas, would you forgive, or would you choose to move on? Share your thoughts and your story in the comments below, because your voice deserves to be heard too. And don't forget to hit subscribe so we can continue sharing stories of courage, choice, and the quiet power of standing up for yourself.